Hi, Year 12s. I thought I'd quickly run through the story of $5 Family for those who are interested in kind of knowing further about it. I really love this book and really love all the stories, but unfortunately, we ran out of time to go through $5 Family in class. But I think this is also quite a wonderful story, even if you wanted to write from Michelle's perspective in another scene or something. Or it's a good one to talk about in your outcome task, which a few of you have already done in your practice pieces. So that's why I thought I should just go through it in a little bit of detail. The main thing I love about $5 Family is that the conflict in relationships that occurs is Michelle's just really disappointed with Des, who is her partner. And she's just had a baby, and she just comes to realize how he's never satisfied her on so many levels, and he's a bit of a drop kick, really. And that, she had particular expectations on what life with a partner will be about, but when she became a mum, all of that became kind of irrelevant at that point, and it was in fact her what she could give to her baby that was important, and she ends up realizing that she actually has everything that the baby could ever need, and it's coming from her, it's coming from no one else. So this story is really beautiful in that it shows how empowering motherhood is. In fact, in Like a House on Fire, we see a lot of stories that show how hard, how rewarding, how difficult motherhood is. We've got Flexion with the Miscarriage, we've got Like a House on Fire, we've got Waiting, we've got 72 Derwents with the, not a great mother figure. And then we've got $5 Family. We've got Ashes with Chris's mum, having expectations upon Chris that Chris can't meet. And we've got Static with the mother-in-law of, I think it's Marie, who's got expectations on Marie, and Marie's got expectations on her. So mothers actually feature a lot in basically all the stories in Like a House on Fire. And this story really shows how empowering motherhood is, and how important mothers are to their babies. So the first page I'd like you to turn to is page 96. And for me, it's down the bottom here. We're just going to go from Her baby looks squashed and red. Her baby's face looks squashed and red, startling in its strangeness. The photo on the baby oil bottle looks more than what Michelle had expected to give birth to, a chubby little baby with bright rosy cheeks. Kennedy's taking the time to describe just even how the baby looks like, so really take time to describe what your character is seeing. Clapping its hands together, a cute wisp of hair curled up on top. When Des had taken a look at his son the first afternoon, he'd seemed perplexed, the same startled, faintly incredulous look she'd seen on his face when she'd turned and glimpsed him during labour. "Do you want to hold him?" Charles said, trying to manoeuvre herself up in bed a bit. She was getting good at holding him, not so scared. The way they'd wrapped him, it was like holding a big parcel of hot chips. A simile there. Jason's face peered out of the cotton blankets, a tiny old man, exhausted after a long and arduous journey. That's a metaphor. "Nah," Des had said, "that's all right." He'd wiped his hands nervously down his jeans, a gesture that had almost made her feel sorry for him again. "How about I go and get a disposable camera?" It was the closest he'd come to apologizing for taking hers down to cash converters. "No," she'd said, stroking Jason's fingers. "I'll sort something out," deliberately not looking at Des, already wanting him to go. So in this passage, we already see that Des is pretty disappointing. Like, he doesn't want to even hold his newborn son. If that was kind of my partner, I'd be like, what the hell? Why would you not want to do that? What kind of father are you? So already there's things about Des which are not meeting our expectations. The other thing, he doesn't seem too supportive. the other thing that he did was to take her camera to Cash Converters. Now, Cash Converters socially is a place where people who are probably not as well off use in order to get some quick cash somewhere. So that's just another clue that they're probably not too well off. Cool. So that's just kind of our introduction to Des. I want you guys to flip to page 99. Actually, I'm not going to talk about page 98 or 99, but I just want to let you guys know the story is about the fact that Jason, who is her baby, is struggling to latch on and breastfeed. She's struggling to breastfeed, and so she's kind of becoming a little bit insecure and thinking, oh, I'm not really a good mum. I can't even get my son to breastfeed. So she's already feeling a little bit of low self-esteem because, you know, her partner's kind of useless and she's not that well off. And she later finds out that he's been cheating. So she just already feels like she's not much of a partner or not much of, you know, a successful person. And now she feels like Jason can't even latch on to her. You know, what kind of mum am I? So that's kind of the struggle she's going through. Oh, okay, sorry. If you could turn to page 97, I just wanted to quickly talk to you about this little passage. It's kind of halfway down and where she says, you've got little hands, I've got big hands. So this is what she's singing. She's saying, you've got little hands, I've got big hands. Let's put our hands together. She sings to him in a whisper. She invents heaps of songs in the middle of the night, songs that definitely sound as good as the Wiggles. She lies curled with her tiny oblivious son, hearing his moth breaths, singing softly to him until she has to put him back in the crib before the midwife does her rounds again. They've tried to be strict about it, but she bets they wouldn't push their luck if she told them to mind their own business. Her wakefulness seems tinged now with a private, freshly minted exhilaration. So now you're getting a clue that Michelle's just had Jason and she is finding some sort of confidence here within herself and just the fact that there is a baby that is depending on her unconditionally. So she is feeling exhilarated and she's feeling confident enough to kind of sing songs to him, be creative, all of that stuff she felt like she was lacking in life. She's got it here with her baby. Okay, I'd like you to turn to page 101. Let me just get it up here and hopefully I can finish it up in time. Okay, so we're going from Michelle continues to trying to feed her baby, sort of 2/3 down. Michelle continues trying to feed her baby, seeing his mouth open sleepily and keep missing. She wants to cry with frustration, but she's scared to. The midwives and nurses are watching her too keenly, trained to keep an eye out for the new mothers who dissolve into weeping. Feeling teary, one had asked her as she watched Michelle tentatively wash Jason in his bath. Like, it's all a bit overwhelming. Is baby attaching okay? She'd hesitated and answered, well, no. He's only had that colostrum stuff since he was born. That's the only thing that's worrying me. What about you, though? Got the baby blues? What are they? Well, crying all the time for no reason, say. Michelle, concentrating on supporting Jason's fragile head, had glanced over at the midwife. No, she'd said truthfully. Before birth, maybe, but not anymore. One thing I wanted to point out to you guys is the use of dialogue. A lot of your stories don't really have dialogue at the moment, or are kind of just your character's thoughts the whole way through. Really consider dialogue and your character doing something in the story, because it really makes things a bit engaging. It adds a bit of a point to your story, and it can just be short little sentences just like this. So have a look at this passage, have a look at the dialogue. One thing I found important is the nurse is trying to figure out if, Michelle's got postnatal depression or symptoms of it. But actually, Michelle is gaining confidence. She reckons before birth maybe she was pretty depressed, but now not anymore. She has found some sort of purpose in life. Okay. The person she'd been before the birth, in fact, seems like a dopey, thick-headed version of who she's become now. So notice that the dialogue's happened, but then she goes kind of inside into her own thoughts for the next paragraph. So you guys can also swap into that when you're writing your creatives. So optimistic, it was all going to change now with Des at the birth. She'd browse mistily through all those cards at the newsagents that showed guys with their shirts off holding little vulnerable babies, expressions of adoration on their faces, guys who looked like models, but still. All the time she was pregnant, she thought that adoration would kick in once Des saw the baby and she saw Des with the baby. She'd had some vague idea that she'd be able to rest and Des would take over and look after them both, hold his son unashamedly in the crook of his arm like the men in the cards. When labour began and she'd been admitted to hospital, so this is like a flashback to a past memory. When labour began and she'd been admitted into hospital, he'd started off being just like he always was, and she'd been so glad he was there at first, just like his usual familiar self in the strange room. She'd sensed him pacing around restlessly, grabbing the remote control beside the bed to surf through the channels on the TV up on the wall. But once the surf of real pain began rolling in, once she started moaning and swearing when people spoke to her, she'd sensed him in her peripheral vision getting jumpy. She glanced over him and seen him caught out with that expression of startled distaste. So distaste kind of means disgusted. So he's looking over at what his girlfriend's going through and he's actually disgusted. God knows what she'd hoped he'd do, rub her back like on the video in the antenatal class maybe, or sponge her forehead with a face washer. She couldn't put her finger on what she'd expected, but whatever it was, this wasn't it. So she's been really disappointed with him. Not this wordless hanging back like it was all beyond him, folding and unfolding his arms. They kept telling her to listen to her body, which was embarrassing, like doing those neck massages at the antenatal classes, but in a rush, to her distant, pinpointed surprise, she realized they were right. It was like something she'd known once and then forgotten. She just needed a minute or two to gather her strength, unhook the heavy monitoring belt from around her belly, get off the bed and kneel on the floor, grab one of those towels. But then she'd known exactly what to do. So again, this is showing like how giving birth is empowering in itself. Like first she's looking over at Des and she's like, I don't know what's happening with him. She's feeling really disappointed that he can't even kind of help her out. But then she realizes as she's giving birth, she actually knows what to do. When they'd handed Jason, though, it was like she finally stopped thinking about Des, stopped even worrying about him. She leaned over and smelled her son's head, fresh as newly turned earth, simile, then glanced over at her boyfriend, who was back now, bashing an empty Gatorade bottle mindlessly against his thigh and jigging his leg in his stretched tracksuit pants as he sprawled in the chair in the corner, so freaked out he couldn't even meet her eye. Useless, she thought, feeling a startling urge of impatient, adrenaline-fueled scorn. Even this phrase, impatient, adrenaline-fueled scorn, that is so descriptive. That's using a lot of adjectives and an interesting verb. So that's something that you guys can think to do as well. She was suddenly way beyond him now. She couldn't believe she'd ever needed him for anything. So again, we're seeing a pattern how birth and motherhood is giving her confidence. She was wishing and wanting for Des to be this dad, to come in and take over and, sponge her forehead and make her feel relaxed. But once they handed her Jason, she's like, I don't even need this useless person who can't even help me out. I have everything that the baby actually needs here. We're going to run out of time in this video. I have like a few bits and pieces I'd love to talk about, so I'll just do that in the next video.